Hey, everybody, here's this Agile thing. I'm Matt Beam.
I'm Mike Barkey.
And I'm Jeff Singleton.
And the topic this week is some mixture of training from the back of the room as summarized by AI, the risk of AI itself, and or whatever Mike was thinking about.
I was just thinking, I saw a press conference somewhere, and they were talking about this pervasive fear of AI taking over the world and destroying everybody. You are feeding it more information.
I am part of the problem officially.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Would you like to discuss your feelings about ChatGPT? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because he's listening.
Well, actually, one of the things...
It's a he?
Exactly. Let's not get into gender now. It has to be in text format, otherwise it doesn't know it exists. So you can't have it because I was thinking I would say, hey, look at this video on YouTube and summarize it for me. And they're like, no, we don't do video. I'm sure that's 15 minutes away, but
yeah, you sure couldn't just run the video through a text speech to text converter and then read the transcript?
Somebody's already doing that. I'm sure it's not available on the OpenAI.
Not on the free version.
Not in the free version. Yeah, that's right. You could subscribe for $20 a month and probably it'll do it.
And have it critique your video.
We should probably do that. I can't wait to see what it thinks we're up to here.
But you had a real topic.
Well, there's this. So one of the things that Agile coaches do is they do training, right? Typically, part of an engagement would be, hey, teach our people how to do this stuff. Give us some mixture of the theory, the background, the mental models, as well as the, some of the nuts and bolts. How do you do this stuff? How do you implement stuff? What do you do day to day? And so I reread this book. It's called Training from the Back of the Room from Sharon Bowman. Mm-hmm. It's basically about how to do effective training and how she starts off with the idea that a lot of the training you've been to is not effective. The model that I think we're all familiar with is sort of the standard lecture where there's a person standing in front of a room. Maybe, God forbid, they have PowerPoint slides there and they're reading. They might stop every now and then and be like, any questions? And everybody's asleep, so there's never any questions. And they just keep going on, and there's a break every 3 days or whatever.
There's clearly a high degree of engagement in that model.
Exactly.
The instructor is right there.
Totally.
The whole time.
Totally. So she says, don't do that, basically.
Cool.
And, yeah.
Not done. All right. Yeah.
So you're already ahead of the back. There's, again, she's got a mnemonic model. She talks about four C's. Do you guys remember what the 4 C's are from Training at the Back of the Room?
No, it's card, conversation.
I think you're going to be short one.
Yeah.
Jeff got it, though.
It's actually connections, concepts, concrete practice, and conclusions.
What the?
Concrete practices? So really CCCCP?
I'm going to leave that alone. It's not a political podcast.
I was just gonna
Jeff, how did you know that? Were you just reading this book as well, or just something?
I've read it a few times, and I want to say
it.
Probably 2 or 3 months ago, I was kind of reviewing the practices, trying to leverage something for some teams that I was working with. So, because the conventional way of doing training, I think we've all recognized it
sucks.
It works for one person, the trainer.
Yes.
And then that's the problem. Once again, we're forgetting who is the audience and who is the customer, and are they getting it? And, we like to do the fire hose thing where we, fit a whole bunch of stuff into 3 days or 2 days or whatever it is. And when they walk out of there, how much of that do they retain? And that's if they apply it immediately.
Mm-hmm. Which is also where coaching comes in as a follow-up.
Right. But if they don't do anything, and, we've been in plenty of coaching situations where we try to get them actively working on things that they just learned yesterday. And sometimes they engage, and sometimes they say, oh, you know what? I've got all this other stuff to do. Let's do this later. Okay, so, and that's where you step in and you say, okay, so if that's going to go a week, then you're going to forget everything that we talked about. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so this was really kind of an approach for helping to get people engaged so that the learning sort of sticks. And I like to even break it into even smaller bite-sized segments, the whole micro-learning perspective, because trying to learn a bunch of stuff at one time, you're going to forget half of it. So let's do a little piece, practice it, do another little piece, practice it.
Yep.
Bring it all together.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting parts in the beginning of the book. It talks about brain science and neuroscience and how, because she makes the point that you naturally learn all the time. You just don't maybe think about it as learning because you were absorbed in the activity, whatever. It's probably not listed as school on your calendar, but if there's something you're naturally interested in, you're probably not just having stuff, information shoveled at you. You're probably doing something at the same time you're practicing. So it's remarkable. It's about what's most effective for the user. So for this training I'm doing tomorrow, I thought maybe I'd have like 20-minute because concepts, right? One of the C's is effective explanations. So I'm thinking,
there's no C in that.
Yeah, well,
Except
that's why
maybe in the middle of effective. Is this really one of those 4 C's where the middle word is the middle?
Well, Mike, you have to read the book to find out. I don't want to deny your
I might have, but nobody told me this was the topic today.
That's true. That's an excellent point. So like 20 minutes of C, of concepts, and then like 15 minutes of exercise of, what would that be? Concrete practice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then like at the beginning of every module, a connection, like, what do you know about this? Like, what's your background? Get people talking. And at the end of every module, or maybe at the end, like, what did you learn? How are you going to put this in basically not force people, but encourage them to think actively about what the hell this thing is and how make the connection to their own life. Because, I find when I'm learning something, if I don't connect it to what I already know, first of all, some of it might be wrong, right? There might be a contradiction there, and I might not discover that ever, or I'll probably just forget. Like if I don't have a connection to other stuff, it's just some stuff that slides off of me, and I don't really retain it. What do you think?
No, I mean that's certainly been my experience. If I'm just mailing it in as an attendee, if I'm not connecting something, it's in one ear and out the other. So
yeah,
I may as well not have even attended, which would be a waste of time.
Yeah. Was there anything different about online that, any techniques or? Because she talks about moving around the room and breaking people up into physical. Yeah.
That's the one that I struggle with because in this current remote state that we're in, for better or for worse, she does talk about getting people active, and whether you have every online attendee get up and do jumping jacks or whatever it happens to be. I think there's an update, TBR for online. I think she's updated things on her website. TBR for online learning or something like that. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but it's on my list because, I don't know, it seems like we're in this perpetual state of being remote. So I guess we're going to have to adapt to that. So.
Yeah. Obviously you can make breakout rooms in Zoom, and, there might be some stuff you could do better, but that would be leveraging technology that is still evolving. Like, I don't know.
What did ChatGPT say to do?
It says, yeah, brainstorming, discussion, group activity, storytelling, visual aids, active learning, metaphors, and analogies. That's what they say.
See, it doesn't know
Thanks.
everything.
Thanks, ChatGPT. You know, if you're not using ChatGPT, you're falling somewhere, they say. Whoever they are. All right, so what else? I mean, there's these 4 C's. There's you want to make a connection, make sure that they understand why this piece of a lesson is important. Is that what you're saying? That's the start.
I think the
Nod
connections
or shake your head something.
I mean, I really think connection, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's more about making connection to the train, not having a one-way flow of information, right? Where the audience is disconnected. Like you want the people, the trainer and the trainee connected, and you want people connected to each other in the class, because otherwise you're just passively sitting there. So that's my understanding of what connection means.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's my take. Because to your point earlier, if they can make that connection early on to their real life situation, they're much more likely, presumably, to be engaged and listen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a practical approach to this. Well, pragmatic. Let's go pragmatic. So you are giving a training class tomorrow. You have a newly minted reader of Reading from the Back of the Room. You've researched this. ChatGPT gave you a summary. You want to apply your 4 C's to this class tomorrow. So,
to be fair, I read it before, but I just asked for a summary. Yeah.
Yeah, but
so
okay,
that's fine.
How newly reminted then?
I guess. So, like, how do those C's apply? Is that your question?
Yeah. How would you apply them? So you've got. How long is your class?
Well, it's scheduled from 9 to 5, but it's
okay. So full day class.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any other sessions, or is it just this one?
Just one
and done. Okay. So you've got an 8-hour class that you need to do. You've got 4 C's to distribute across or repeat as necessary across this schedule. Mm-hmm. How do you apply it?
So the C of connection would be talk less as the trainer. Start off by asking them what they want out of the class. What do they already know about it, right? I don't want to assume that they're completely ignorant of it. There are probably some people on there who know quite a lot about it. So figure out who they are, where they're coming from, what they already know, and then sort of try to tailor the stuff as I go along to them and to their knowledge, their existing knowledge, to make that connection to the existing knowledge as well as connection to me as a trainer and to them, encourage them to talk amongst themselves. And this is something I do anyway in trainings. Like, I don't want to just talk, right? I want people to interrupt. I want it to be interactive. That's always been kind of my approach. So I think that's what the first C of connection.
Do you find, so to go to the virtual question, do you find connection more difficult with a virtual class than a room full of people?
I don't know if it's more difficult. It's more clumsy. It's definitely different.
Okay.
I mean, in some cases it's easier because generally it's not as good, I would say. I mean, it's just you get more information with in person, right? Because people's cameras don't have to be on to be able to see them in the room, for example.
Like you get more data. You've got body language, you've got position, you've got where their attention is going, if there's any side conversations in the room. I mean, I don't know how many times I've been doing an online training class or an online presentation of some kind, and it turns out there's a back channel conversation going on in Slack where you have no visibility into what's going on, right?
Yeah.
So, which you can only get in a classroom if they're passing notes, which you have a chance to see, or whispering to each other, which you have a chance to hear.
Well, they could still be doing it in a class, but they'd have to have their notebooks or their laptops open, right? So,
which is this other thing, classroom situation I shut down like almost immediately.
Makes sense.
Anyway, continue on.
That's just me. But hey.
So that was the first C, connection. Concept is, it's this is really about having clear and concise explanations. So I've got modules already. I've got 10 modules in there. Mm-hmm. And so
you've broken it into 10 little. How long is a module?
I'm thinking maybe 20 minutes, followed by exercises for about 15 minutes. Not more than 90 minutes before there's a break. I don't know if that's too long. It might be too long, actually.
Yeah, those diapers will hold.
Interesting.
Well, you said not more than, so it could be less than.
Yeah.
Depending on where the division between. Do you want to do breaks in the middle of a module?
Generally not.
Between the concept and the concrete practice?
Well, the module is just the concept. It's just the
I know, but
explanation.
then there's the concrete. Would you do your break between the two halves, or would you want to keep them?
I'd rather keep them together, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because to make sure that when they go to the exercise, it's as fresh as possible.
Okay, so every time you hit a conclusion, you kind of glance at the clock and go, "Has it been enough time that we should have a break?"
Well, I went ahead and I created sort of a rough schedule, so I want to have an idea. And part of it is the first time I'm giving this class, and so I'm not exactly sure about the timings because their participation is going to change the start and end times, I have to assume. So we'll see. But like Jeff was saying, smaller chunks of delivery in terms of the concepts. Less talking on my part, more back and forth to keep them not on their toes necessarily, but involved.
Mm-hmm. Especially on a Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday, I think it'll be a challenge, but it's a good challenge because here's the thing. If you can keep people engaged on a Saturday for roughly 8 hours, and presumably a nice Saturday, then I think you've hit on something. Because that's kind of the secret sauce is getting people who are online to pay attention and get engaged. So I'll be curious to see it.
Excellent.
Maybe I'll attend.
8 hours seems like a long span.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So you're going to do breaks.
Mm-hmm.
How long? 10 minutes? 15?
I was thinking 10 minutes, 10-minute breaks, and then maybe a half hour for lunch. But we'll see. These are all just sort of starting points. Again, in the agile spirit, like I put together a first version that I cut together, and I'm getting it out there in front of people as quickly as possible. No charge for the first one. It's just to get feedback and to see timings, and so I expect to adjust a lot. But that's the idea: 20 minutes per concept, 15 minutes per exercise for concrete practice, frequent breaks. And assume 8 hours in case it expands, but probably it'll end up being a 6-hour class. Some of the stuff might come in or go. Like I want to get from them. Like, was there anything missing that you thought we would go over? Is there anything that wasn't useful? All of that stuff I want to make sure because again, the point of it is the audience, right? The reason the class exists is so that they can get value out of it, and so ultimately that's the test. And so if they tell me that it's not valuable, by definition, that's the answer. So,
okay, and this is on user stories.
Yes.
So, basic format, writing.
Yeah.
Content.
Yeah. So let's see. What is it going to be? It's going to be the definition. Where does it come from? There's a bit on agile values and principles to set the context. Different formats like the Connextra format, the Gherkin format, the process of refining. Acceptance criteria, epics and features and stories and themes, a little bit on, I can't remember what else is there. Oh, estimation, I think they want to know about, and a bit on story mapping, which seems ridiculous, but I think I can do it in half an hour. Again, an experiment.
I mean, you could definitely show a story map.
Yeah.
And you could talk through what the parts of it are. And you could equate a little bit, depending on how it depends on how you approach story mapping too.
Yeah, I think you can boil it down, especially if you ask ChatGPT to summarize it for
you. Why don't they just do that? Why are they listening to you?
Yeah, I think so. That's an excellent question. Why would somebody go to a training class in the era of Chat GPT, and I think the answer is because you can get user story classes pre-recorded, right? But I think the answer is interaction with a person. I think it's the fact that you have a person with a soul who's an expert who can connect with. It's the second C. It's
Give
connection.
ChatGPT time, man.
Yeah. Well,
It could get a soul. You never know.
yeah, I think that's going to be a very difficult upgrade. So, and then the part that I'm thinking about is conclusion. How often do I bring them back? So at the beginning of every module, every concept, I could be like, so what do you know about estimation? So what do you know about features? So what do you, right? And, get to prepare them for that. But do I have like summarize what you've learned in every module? Do I do it at the end? What do you,
That's what I was going to
How many
ask.
opinions do you have in your class?
20.
Okay, so realistically, you're going to ask 20 people, what do you already know about concept X? And you're going to hear 20 people respond for a period
Hopefully.
of time.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you're going to gauge whatever that time period is. And then you're going to go into your presentation of the work or the concept tailored to meet whatever their gaps in knowledge are. Then you'll go into concrete practice, give them some exercise that reinforces what you just showed them.
I guess. Seems difficult, doesn't it?
Well, in 8 hours to do 10 topics that way? Maybe.
Well, remember,
Depends
they're
on-
10 little bitty bite-sized.
They're not. They're 20 minutes bite sizes. Even if you do the math, he's got 20 minutes of exercises and 15 minutes.
15 minutes of exercises.
15 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of concept, some number of minutes of connection, which is impossible to measure.
Right.
So you're talking 10 minutes of connection?
Well, that
maybe?
would be part of the concept that would be built into the 20 minutes probably. Again, I'm not exactly sure what the timings are going to be, but this is how stuff has to sort in somehow. Yeah.
Because you got 480 total minutes.
If I use all 8 hours, yeah.
Oh. But if you take, and then you got conclusion wrap up, right? So even if you allocate 10 minutes for the connection and the conclusion, you're talking 45 minutes a topic. That's giving you only a half hour of leeway. That's not enough time for breaks. So the math is challenging. If you were to approach this from a mathematical standpoint.
So if you were to jettison some
Story mapping.
pieces.
Sorry. Please.
Yeah.
Please. Go
So
ahead.
when you
That's
think of the 10...
that's a session in its own right. Story mapping is
yeah.
you can show it to them and say, "Oh, by the way, next time we'll talk about this." And,
Believe me, I've had that thought. Yes, I totally agree.
Okay.
Yeah, because this story mapping is its own. It's if they're just learning how to write a story, and I assume you're going to teach them how to write good ones.
No, this is about how to write crappy stories.
Well, see, then
From the
follow-up
point of view
class
of
is
the-
about how to make it better. So.
Exactly.
So I think there's a way, maybe, and I may be optimistic here, where you could almost surreptitiously sneak in the story mapping instead of making it a subject in itself or a module in and of itself. Get them writing stories and put them on a card, and the card happens to be in a format
Yes.
of a story map. They don't know it's a story. Well, maybe they do, but not even introducing the topic of story mapping. Hey, let's just get this story on the board. Let's show what this looks like. And before you know it, they've built a
Yes.
story map. They don't.
That's
again,
an idea. So, I mean, one of the ways I like seeing story maps, or I've seen story maps put into practical effect. If you were to talk about, if your practical exercise was to have them write stories in relative to some example, right? How do they know what stories to write? You can help drive them toward that by talking about, say, a user journey. And just saying what's the first thing that a user is going to want to do? What do they do next? What do they do next? And you map that out. You don't even have to say, and just set down certain rules. When we're setting up these, let's put a verb on every one of these things. So if there's an action associated with it, we know who is the beneficiary of that. So who wants to do that? And keep walking them through the map and say, okay, do we have a complete journey here? Now let's write the stories that represent that. And you can take a shorthand from, we know who the user was, or we know who the person was. So that's our who.
Yep.
The verb is your what, and your why is probably the top of the column, what the overall thing that piece of the story is trying to achieve. And now there's a concrete map back to how this is, and then you can explain why the story map is useful. The story map is useful for providing context that eventually these individual stories are going to get thrown into some tool like Jira.
Yeah. Wow.
There, how long?
3058.
And that they will get prioritized based on whim or value or something, but they will lose context. They will no longer be presented in this sequence. So discerning the overall picture of the system from just that vertical list of stories may not give someone an idea what's going on, but the map lives on, and the map will always be there to give you that context.
The map lives on. Yes.
And you've got 12, 15 hours to straighten this out.
Days, whatever.
You're good.
It is kind of what I got.
I wouldn't procrastinate on it, but
I do basically take him through, like, here's what a persona is. Here's a story that you write. Here's some features and epics. Here's splitting some stories. And so all this stuff is on Miro. And the very last thing is, here's a template for a story map. And so I could the idea is to copy what you've already got and sort of put it in this pattern, and we can talk about, because you're right. Story mapping itself probably should be a separate class, and who knows, maybe it will be, but it's, again, we're just running this to see what fits, what's valuable. Yeah.
good. Okay.
In conclusion,
That's where I want to go. So conclusions in every module, or is that too much? Conclusion just at the end?
What if you did a mini conclusion? I think there's value in circling back each time to make sure that everybody's been able to connect what they just learned, but not in an elongated sort of thing, because then that's going to eat up a bunch of time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do that in a mini conclusion sort of way. I do believe, obviously, there's got to be a conclusion at the end. But can you fit in some mini conclusions in each segment? I don't know. I think if you have time, it's ideal. But to Mike's point, man, the clock is ticking. So I don't know.
Well, if there's anything, some instructors will put a quiz of sorts at that time, a bunch of questions you put to the audience and have them answer that would demonstrate that they know that. You already started though in the connection phase by identifying what you would call gaps in their learning that you're about to try to fill. So would it be valuable to review those and say, let's just check the box. Have we answered any of these things? Do you still have questions about this?
Yeah, I like that idea. And also maybe just ask them, so how are you going to use this stuff? Can somebody, maybe not everybody, but like 2 or 3 people, give me an example of how you're going to use this in your day-to-day? Presumably you're here because you can write stories at work.
As a product owner, I will use stories.
Because I need to. Yes.
So that you will get off my back.
Just taking notes here. Get off my back.
So the audience, are they already immersed in the industry, whether it's development or they're doing stuff, or are these trends? Because my understanding is these are transitioning military people, right?
No, they're not necessarily veterans. They could
Oh.
be veterans. They're all
okay.
people who have already been through the CSM training or some Scrum training. I don't know if it might be Scrum Master or Product Owner. I'm not.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So
So they may have theory, not practice.
Yes.
Good to know. Okay.
Yeah, we'll see.
So
Well, you're gonna have a fun day.
I'm going to be inside. I mean, I decided to do it on Saturday because I think presumably these people have jobs. That's an assumption. And so they can't do it during the week. But I would rather do it on a Tuesday, honestly.
You would rather have a weekend of your own. But if you do all your training on a weekend, then your week is your weekend.
100%. Flexibility is my watchword.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
well, good luck to you, sir.
Thank you. We're throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, who salutes it, etc. Anything else about training from the back of the room that you would like to go into? There's more C's, I'm sure.
I'd love to talk about more if only I knew more about it.
you know, one of the pieces in the one of the C's of the concepts that Sharon talks about is pair and share, and you know, a lot of the things that we are discovering and riffing on are overlapping. And so when I've got two colleagues that are doing a session at Scrum Alliance, the Global Scrum Gathering next week, and they were going to do a liberating structures sort of thing.
I was just going to
One,
mention
two,
that,
for all. One of the liberating structures to engage the audience in this workshop. And anyway, I don't want to divert onto that, but that's kind of that pair-share concept that Sharon talks about in concept. In other words, how do you get the audience helping to teach themselves? Because that's how we learn. And a lot of times I think the people that are teaching are learning more than sometimes the people that are supposedly the learners. And so I believe that's the concept. And so this is all to say, leveraging some of those liberating structures, in this case, 1, 2, for all, or in the case that she brings up is pair and share, which is very similar to 1, 2,
right?
The 1, 2 part of 1, 2, for all.
Yeah.
It makes this fabric, I think, that's really interesting to try to navigate how to convey concepts better and get them to stick with folks. So
yeah, that's my biggest unknown is how those exercises are going to evolve, right? How to connect people, especially remotely. And I'm using Zoom, so I can't just dump people into breakout rooms and expect them to teach each other.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right? Because when you're in person, you can walk around and you can also simultaneously keep an eye on everybody else. And so you know where to go. In Zoom breakout rooms,
They're
until
gone.
you don't know until you,
Are you going to have help?
No, I'm thinking it's going to be 4 breakout rooms, and I'm just going to bounce around a bunch. But,
Okay.
yeah.
In
We'll see.
15 minutes, 4 groups. So
That's the idea. We'll see.
When time is short, probably doing as much prep up front so they're not fumbling around,
Yeah.
because I don't know how familiar they'll be with Miro. Is it Miro or Miro?
The second, the latter.
Miro, okay. They're all very similar, but they each have their own idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
I've seen where people will just fumble around with the technology, and man, you can fritter away 10, 15 minutes of your time just getting everybody aligned on the tools and the use of the tools. So
Yeah.
the degree that you can get them prepped and simplify the tool use and setup up front will probably save you some time.
That's a great idea. Yeah, they'll have clear instructions. They'll have examples that they've already seen of like what I want them to do. So they'll have templates. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I might have to build something at the beginning about how to use Miro and.
Are they getting any prep material?
They've gotten an email, not much actually. So that might be the unknown that we're going to discover tomorrow. We'll see. It's going to be a lot of sense and respond. So we'll see.
And the breakouts, you're going to allocate them dynamically, or are you going to try to pre-assign? Of course, you don't know the audience, so that will be difficult to do.
I've got a list of people, but it's not like I have accounts for them in my Zoom thing, so I can't. I'd have to wait for them. I could, as they show up, I could decide to put them into, but I don't think it makes any difference what they go into.
Do any of them work together?
I don't believe so. And but even if they did, like it might be better to have them randomly assigned, right? Just because that's part of the benefit. But my question is, so if I've got 4 rooms defined and they work on exercises across the modules that build on each other, I want to keep them in the same rooms the whole time, right? Or does it matter even? Maybe it would be better for them to be like, every time we go into an exercise, it's random, and you can be like, well, here's different material than it was, but it's all example material anyway, right? What do you think?
True, but if they all go in different directions, like the odds of the 4 breakouts going exactly the same direction or implementing the same way, maybe depending on what the examples are. But let's say they all went slightly askew from each other. Then the second one, you get randomly associated. At least one person is back in their own room again, probably.
The same room.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you've got a catch-up period where you introduce everyone who's now in this room to what's already in the room, and now you'll do the next exercise based off from where that sits to where you want it to go next. That might introduce a delay.
I guess the question is, do I want them to be cohorts as they go through the training, or like just dynamic groups that are new for every exercise?
If we're talking about what Jeff was saying earlier about the pair and share thing, maybe a cohort is a more effective way to get through it. At the very least, they'll have some measure of continuity when they get through each one. And if there is a group that is particularly struggling, then they're going to probably buy more of your time. Right. Whereas the cohort that seems to be doing pretty well, you would be able to give them a little bit more leeway.
So maybe what I'll do is as they arrive in the morning, I'll assign them to rooms manually, because then those groups, as far as I understand in Zoom, those breakout rooms persist. You can put people in and take them out, but they'll be the same.
Yeah, they can until you close that session or it crashes. Yeah.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, yeah. But if it's random, like you can't assign people to breakout rooms randomly and then bring them back into those breakout rooms the next time with the same population. I don't know.
There are ways to handle that too. I mean, you can tell them, go to your rooms, go to your breakout rooms. And the understanding is if they were in one cohort was in breakout room number 1, after they've taken a break and come back, reconvene, and then they go to a breakout again, you say, go back to your respective breakout room that you were in. And when you think about it, if we were in person and we had people breaking out, what's their tendency? Natural human tendency is to probably to migrate back to the group that you were working with. Number 1, because it lowers the barrier. To Mike's point, continuity. I don't want to have to get up to speed with a new cohort. This ain't I'm drawing a blank.
So self-organization, you're modeling good behavior. Also, if there's a conflict going on in one of the rooms, then
But
the
also,
conflicting parties could select into another group.
yeah, but also the decision fatigue is a real thing, right? It's like I want them to use most of their brain power to talk about the concepts and do the exercises. I don't necessarily want them to have a new problem to solve, which is what breakout room do I go to every time, right?
Right.
It does make sense to get them settled and give them a sense of not safety, but like some comfort, right? Like at least I know what room I'm going to. Then just remove that as a distraction. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like open space where, we have butterflies and bees flitting all
Yeah.
about. We want there to be some degree of continuity so that they, like to your point, get some comfort with their cohort so they can continue the conversation.
Yeah, because those people will probably be strangers, and so just building rapport with those strangers in the first exercise, that's valuable. Why would you throw that away? Like we don't reteam more than we need to ever in Agile. We try to maintain those relationships because they're not free to build. Totally. Okay, good. That's helpful. Well, I didn't want this to be about me and my class necessarily. Tough. Okay. What's your next question about me and my class? I'm here to take questions.
What's your example?
You're going to hate this answer. My example of, so I had, I'll use the passive voice. I had 6 fictional companies created for me. I won't say how I got that to work.
I can guess.
Yeah.
How do you do?
They,
Fine,
them.
you've got fictional companies. Go on.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, so it's all going to be about, basing, who do you think the people are who would be customers for this, to build a persona? What are the valuable things that the company could do to build user stories? What are bigger examples? What would that roll up to for epics and features? How would you split that out? How would you refine those stories? How would you build that onto a story map? Et cetera, et cetera. It's all,
Is there a glaring problem or something that stands out? I assume you didn't just say, here's a fictional company, make up something you'd do for them. Like you've got to direct them in some way.
Yeah, what's the problem they're trying to solve or something?
Yeah.
Well, that's included in the dossier of the companies. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're going to provide a case study, really, sort of thing.
Lightweight.
Now, okay, I got you. Now, does everybody get the same case study, or are you going to distribute 4 different case studies, or?
Well, there's 6 of them, and there should be 4 cohort groups. We'll say groups. So they can choose, or 2 of them could do the same one, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you'll give them a choice. Okay.
And do they have different motivational structures? Like, is there a company, an LLC, a nonprofit, the major corporate? I mean, do you divide them up that way?
No.
Different types of users, different types of products.
No, that's a great point. They're all for-profit companies. So I was not building in any sort of nonprofit or other sort of. So the assumption is we're building products and there's a profit motive here. So that is one of the
Software
assumptions.
products.
Yeah, they're all software.
Okay.
Trying to think of the challenges I've seen in story writing workshops. If you get into technical examples and the person involved is not technical or doesn't have background in the domain, they tend to back off and defer. So is there to what level of involvement are you looking to get this done?
Well, I do talk about technical requirements, technical stories, non-functional requirements, spikes, bugs, things like that. But it's not a very technically focused, user stories. The whole point is it's about the user, right? So we can accommodate the other stuff, and so we talk about it, but it's not really a focus of this course, at least not yet.
I am remembering one workshop that I did where I was told not all these people know software, so give them examples that don't involve software. So we gave them examples that involve building a house. And they hated it.
Why did they hate it?
Because none of them had any expertise in building houses.
Okay.
So,
And there's your daily dose of irony.
yeah. So
Yeah, exactly. You got to have.
I've still got a file like this thick of house building stories and examples, and it was famously unhelpful.
Yeah.
But it was a great experiment. I just learned not to do that again.
Then it was valuable. All right.
Again,
Well,
the value was only to the instructor.
At least somebody learned something.
yeah, we haven't
Yeah.
done that again, though. I'll have to say.
No.
Hey, one of the other questions I had was, do you know, and you probably don't, maybe you could gauge this during the connection part, who has a familiarity with Miro? And here's where I'm going with it. Instead of people fumbling around, because you're not going to be in every breakout room simultaneously, if you had 4 people that had familiarity with Miro, you
Spread
might.
them across the cohorts.
I was just going to say,
That is a brilliant idea. Thank you, Jeff Singleton. Yes, absolutely. I'm going to do that. Yes.
because that's going to help, again, lower the barrier, and having at least somebody with familiarity and, dare I even say, expertise in something. I wouldn't want to have them all in one, because then they begin, no, here's a better way to do it, and it totally defeats the purpose. But if you distribute them, then they can kind of help lead navigating the technology part of it.
That is brilliant. That's the kind of thing I wouldn't expect to know until I ran the experiment and learned the painful lesson. Thank you very much for that. That's a great idea.
I think that one kind of comes. Remember doing PI planning at that one common.
That one time at band camp?
With that one place where they would practice, like, even how they were going to use Miro for all those examples.
I mean, this comes under the sea of connection, right?
Yeah.
If people aren't connected to each other
I like
and the tools,
this concept of the
full.
sea of connection, not as a letter C, but as a body of water full of connection.
That is a
sea of
different metaphor. Next time on Here's This Agile Thing, the sea of connection, perhaps with Marcelo Lopez.
The sea of concepts, the sea of concrete practice, which is a very weighty topic.
It's about 8 pounds per gallon.
Yeah.
So we've burned 52 minutes and 34 seconds. Anything else that we want? I know, right? Anything else you want to talk about before we close this episode?
No, I think we definitely want to have a update after this.
No, I'm
Very
never
much
talking to
would
you guys
like-
again.
Would definitely like to retrospect on how
Yes.
how your
Your MVP. It's actually
Experiment went.
it's an MVP that you're doing here.
It is.
you're looking for MVLs, minimum viable learnings.
Next time on Here's This Agile Thing, MVPs and MVLs.
MOUSE.
And that has been Here's This Agile Thing. My name was Matt Beam.
I'm Mike Markey.
And I'm Jeff Singleton.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
See you soon.
See you next week.